Hello internet, Yulia speaking. And today I'm doing a little rant. I have a drink here, as I've decided is going to be the trend in these rants. You may not be able to tell yet, because I've only ever done one rant before, and that was for Infinity War. I'm also mildly scared, because this is juice, or, you know, some Russian equivalent, and my sheets are white. So this is gonna be interesting. It's really nice though. So what I want to talk about today is the Lara series, because the movie literally just came out today and I watched it literally with my breakfast. There was way too many literallys in that sentence, but I guess we're going with it. This series, it just makes my heart melt. Okay, so let's talk about books first. This is the Lara series, and the first one is To All the Boys I've Loved Before. This is a story about Lara Jean, who has been kind of really quiet and invisible her whole middle and high school life, essentially, and she's one of three sisters, and her older sister leaves for college to Scotland, super far away, because they're like somewhere in the US. Point is, it's far away. And she's always relied on her sister to be the adult, especially after their mother died when they were really young. And basically the whole point here is that she is suddenly forced to be kind of the older sister, and in addition to that, all the love letters that she would write about her crushes for herself, so that she didn't need to like do anything about them and just like get over them. The letters get sent out and chaos ensues as all these boys, well, 5 of them, are starting to receive these letters, and each one has a different reaction to it and how they approach her about it, and things just kind of start happening from there. So the first time I read this book was actually the summer of 2015, and basically I was very conflicted about it the first time I read it. It started off a bit slow for me, even for 16-year-old me apparently, but then it started like picking up and things started happening, and I started shipping the 2 main characters very hard, very quickly. I also realized that there were a lot of parts of it that I ended up relating to that I wasn't expecting to. And then there were also a lot of parts that I got like angry and frustrated with because I didn't relate to them at all. So it was a very confusing mix for me, because on one hand there's this character that is so much like me that I am so confused by it, but then in other situations the way she would react to things I would get so angry with. And I feel like maybe sometimes, in a weird way, I would also get angry because I would probably have reacted in a similar way. And it was kind of a really nice realization, I guess, seeing that part of yourself from a reader's perspective and realizing like, well, crap, maybe I shouldn't be acting like that if I get annoyed with the character that does it. In terms of the relationships, I straight away really liked Peter and really didn't like any other romantic interest that she could have had there. Peter just seemed really genuine from the very first time that I started reading, whereas some of the others, it just, like, sometimes they were too nice and sometimes they would say things that made them not nice at all, and like that confusion is not something I can deal with in a book. Although there were some things about Peter that also really annoyed me that I'm not going to get into, and I understand that it was kind of part of the drama, but it was a part of the drama that I didn't enjoy. So that's the first book. Now I'm gonna go into the movie real quick to avoid spoilers, and then I'm gonna continue on to the other 2 books. On to the movie. I just watched it now, so it's fresh in my mind, and I have to say that they adapted it to perfection. They got the whole atmosphere of the book completely perfect. They have so many jokes, some of them from the book, some of them completely new. In fact, many of the ones that I really liked are completely new. I loved the way the actors behaved to portray the characters. I thought that was really on point as well. I also realized that a lot of those things that I didn't like in the books and got annoyed with, and some of them because they felt sort of childish in the way that the characters were behaving, a lot of that was actually chopped out of the movie, and I really loved it because it was just left with all the cute and adorable moments that I absolutely loved, and it still had the drama and like the key scenes that made the book what it is. So yeah, it adapted to perfection, I have to say. Okay, now I'm gonna go into some spoilers on the book to movie stuff. The dad in the movie, oh my god, he was so perfect. There were so many moments. Okay, some of them in the trailer, like the sex talk bit in the car, and when Lara Jean was screaming in the background and he's just sitting there with Kitty and Kitty goes, "Women." And he's like, "Tell me about it." That was really funny. And then there was this one bit where Peter comes to take Lara Jean to a party and the dad is there and Lara Jean leaves the room and he's like, "No drinking, no drugs, and no hands." I was laughing so much. The way he was behaving with each of like her friends separately was so funny. Chris came in at some point and they're having this like intense well, she's having a one-sided intense discussion about how he decided to be a gynecologist. Pure gold. I also really enjoyed Lucas in this adaptation, and I wasn't expecting to, because Lucas is a part of the books, but he doesn't really become a friend in the series until later books. But I really loved that they put him in here and he's actually like talking, even though that meant less of Chris. And I am kind of uncertain about Chris in the movie because I think she was adapted really well, but it's just the way she acted made her, in my mind, feel much older than she actually is, and seeing her look like a 16-year-old just felt really weird in my head because, like, to me, she would have had to been at least 18, which is obviously silly because, like, in the book, she is also the same age as Lara Jean. It's just the way she acted felt so much older. But yeah, Lucas also has some really fantastic lines, like when they're talking on the ski trip, which I don't think Lucas was actually even on in the books. But I love that they added him in there. He talks about her as the sexy little Rubik's Cube because Peter can't figure her out, but he's enjoying trying to. And then I think one more thing that I'm gonna say about the movie that I really loved. I already kind of mentioned that I liked that there was much less of the drama parts that I didn't like in the book. And I want to go into a bit more detail about that. It's just because I remember distinctly that in the books, especially the first one, Peter was very much still thinking about Jen, like they both were. And it was very noticeable, even all the way up until the end, that he would keep like talking to her and defending her. So the biggest difference in that to me was when Lara Jean told him that it was Jen that leaked the video. I remember it took him so long to accept that fact in the books, and that was like a part that really annoyed me about him, even though everywhere else, like, he was the perfect person ever in the books to me. But like that one thing just really bugged me, and the fact that in the movie he was just like, yeah, it's her, right away. I don't know, I preferred that so much more because it felt better somehow. Now I'm gonna talk very vaguely about the last two books, so no spoilers in here, but just a lot of my emotions and things I liked and things I didn't. Okay, so P.S. I Still Love You is the second book in the series, and I have to say that this one suffered that second book thing. They just had to include a second love interest, and I did not like that at all. It felt really unnecessary to me because I was already so solid on the relationship that there was in the first book. Adding another person into it, it didn't feel realistic that she could genuinely fall in love with someone else at this point. These sort of triangles only have a point in my mind if she starts to realize that the person she was with is actually not the one for her, and then there's that kind of realization. Whereas when there's just another person in there to create more drama, that kind of annoys me and feels unnecessary. So that kind of happened here. I will say that although the relationships suffered in this one, the family aspect I actually really enjoyed. Like, people were growing up and like with her little sister, and then there was a lot of stuff going around her dad, and that was a big part of like who Lara Jean is as a character, is that her family, and I really enjoyed seeing that aspect in this one. The final book is Always and Forever Lara Jean. This one I enjoyed best out of all the series because there wasn't necessarily any drama in the relationships just because of like adding in drama. There was a lot of kind of real problems that you might face that happened, and in here I think we jump a year or two into the future. So she's a senior just finishing high school and she's about to go off to college, and kind of how that affects not only her relationship but also her family and her friends and everyone kind of going off to do things. And knowing Lara Jean as a character at that point, she has been much more of like the homely person so far, and it was really interesting to see her grow and face all of these like new experiences that I actually faced myself quite recently and were fresh in my mind. And I had that, I kind of almost came full circle, because I feel like when I was reading the first book, I was that like really shy person and I could relate to a lot of those aspects. And then reading this one, having just finished my first year at university, I felt like it hit really close to home again. And I really enjoyed that, how I managed to read the books at such strategic points in my life. I adored Peter in this book. He was just an absolute sweetheart, and I don't want to spoil in what kinds of ways, but I think for the most part this was kind of focused a lot more on Lara Jean growing rather than something happening in their relationship, and her coming to certain realizations that frustrated me a lot of the time. But for the most part, I'm happy how things came to the conclusion that they did, and I enjoyed myself thoroughly with these books. If you're still here watching, if you haven't picked up the books yet, I definitely recommend them. They can be exceptionally relatable, and I have no idea how the author manages to write about these high school experiences in such a realistic way. I thoroughly enjoyed the friendships, the family, the relationships. The cute moments are my absolute favorite, and it never fails to be hilarious as well. I would also thoroughly recommend the movie because it puts together all of those adorable moments into one really glorious 2-hour package, and I kept pausing to write down jokes because they were so good and I wanted to make sure to remember them and mention them in this review. Honestly, it's just a feel-good movie, and I would recommend it even if you didn't read the books or don't want to. Maybe it's just not your cup of tea, or maybe you don't want to commit to a 3-book series. It is genuinely very lovely and relatable and kind of a growing up story. I hope that that was somehow coherent. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, if you want to see more. I put up videos every Wednesday and Saturday, and end of rant.